So, can the government actually cancel holidays? Let's talk about that. Hey guys, and just a quick reminder, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Really helps. Leave some comments down below. Let me know any changes you'd like to see, any content you'd like me to cover, and let's get on with the video. So I had a video ready to go and prepared to talk about whether or not the rise in COVID cases should dictate whether we close schools or not, because it was something that affects me and my wife every day, especially since she's a teacher, and it affects a lot of people I know. And so I was really curious about that. So I did a deep dive into the data, and I might still show that video later, but then this started happening, and I shook my head. Listen, I am probably going to have a more moderate approach to COVID and what I think the government can and cannot do compared to a lot of other fellow Republicans. It's just a fact. I don't have an issue with masks. Whether they actually work or not, who cares? Put a mask on your face, at least when you're outside or in a store. It's not that big of a deal. Just deal with it. Even putting the guidelines of having people be 6 feet from each other, trying to social distance at all times. Fine, I get it. Just do it. We are in untested times. And there is an argument from a lot of the people that disagree with even mask wearing or social distancing that either think COVID is just a hoax or they think that we just need to let it completely run its course. And I'll be honest, when COVID first happened, I was the latter. Let it run its course. Like, it's a virus. Like, let's get people infected. Let's get herd immunity. And then this started happening. And then we started getting more and more data. And we started understanding that COVID was extremely contagious. And then this started happening. And we started thinking COVID was maybe really, really fatal. Because we were having to make knee-jerk reactions. We were in unprecedented times. We haven't dealt with anything like this. And I'm going to even say anything like this ever, because while we had the plague in the past and the Spanish flu, we didn't have social media like we do today. We didn't have the scientific information, the scientific research. And in some ways, that scientific research and information might have hurt us. Because we're so reliant on it. And when we suddenly don't have something, we tend to just make decisions that may not be the right decisions. But because we don't have data, that scares us. And that's what's happening right now. But the problem is we have data. Listen, if in your state your hospitals are starting to become overcrowded, or there's a chance that someone that suddenly may be having a heart attack, it's going to be hard for them to get a bed in the hospital, I'm going to be honest, I don't really have a lot of issues with limitations being posed on either businesses or schools to help slow the curve in those areas. But those are most likely isolated areas. Even here in Arizona and Maricopa County, our hospitalization rates in Maricopa, they're pretty low overall, at least compared to where they were previously. And we have a lot of room and a lot of space that if there was a larger spike that we can handle it. But when you even look at my individual zip code in my town and the hospitals right around us, there's even more hospital beds available than there are in other areas. So while it might be smart to impose certain restrictions in other areas of Maricopa County, those wouldn't even make sense to where we are. So how is it that state governors are now mandating what people across an entire state can do in their own homes? And that's where I have an issue with this. To me, there is no middle ground on this. Listen, you want to make an argument that the state governor has constitutional authority to maybe shut down certain businesses or impose certain requirements that they can only allow a certain number of occupants, that people have to be 6 feet apart, they have to wear masks, that you have to wear masks in public, in the schools, in public transportation, anything like that, I can get behind it. Because odds are there's probably something in your state constitution that dictates that you control how a business license works. And as a business, you have to have a license, and you have to then adhere to certain guidelines, and those guidelines can change. So, barring a constitutional issue to where maybe a state constitution doesn't allow that authority of the governor, then I'm okay with putting restrictions on it if it's necessary and it needs to happen. I'm also okay with check and balances to make sure governors don't, overexert their authority. But at the point that you're now dictating what private citizens can do in their own home, you've crossed a line. And this is a line that us as Americans, honestly, at this point, need to be concerned about and need to be screaming about. Because there's a snowball effect that starts to occur. We let one little thing happen, and if we're not really careful, that one little thing now becomes a larger thing, and then becomes a larger thing, and becomes a larger thing. And the thing is, sometimes you have to make that first little snowball. Sometimes making that first little snowball might even be the right thing to do. But just because it was right for you to make that first one doesn't give you the right to make it into a giant one. So, people in other states, where you're now being dictated how many people you can have in your house at one time, whether or not people have to wear a mask inside your private home, I'm actually going to urge you to do something, and that's write your local congressman, write your local senator, because what is happening right now is nothing short of George Orwell's 1984. Is that at this point these governors are completely overreaching and overstepping what most likely is their constitutional authority. Because it's one thing to tell a business that has to adhere to certain business practices and business licenses, just to say that you have to shut down temporarily or you have to turn around and make sure people are 6 feet apart at all times. It is very different from that scenario to telling a private individual in their private home what they can and cannot do. And if this allows to go unchecked, the question is what's going to happen next? The truth is, I think a lot of stuff during COVID has been overblown by both the right and the left. I think a lot of conspiracy theories exist out there that are just conspiracy theories. And this isn't me saying that these governors are actually trying to completely strip you of all rights. This isn't me saying that the governors tomorrow are going to start declaring martial law and they're going to take away all your guns. This isn't me saying any of those things. Honestly, some of these governors might be doing what they actually think is the right decision, and it could be coming from the right place. But just because it's coming from the right place doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And at the point that we start letting our governors start dictating what we can do in our own private homes, that should raise red flags, and that needs to be something we can be concerned about. Because that little snowball that we had at the beginning, well, it's now starting to turn into a giant boulder. And if we're not careful, pretty soon we're going to find out that Santa Claus isn't even going to be able to come to town this year because the governors will be canceling Christmas also. Stay safe out there. Be smart. Talk to you later.